we're gonna swiftly move on to the next half, or the second half of today's conference, and we will be changing the gear. So the first half was on access to higher education, identifying some challenges and difficulties, and also coming up or proposing solutions. This was the focus of the first half of this conference. In this conference, in the second half, the focus will be on employment. So again, welcome back. Hopefully for those who have been on the first, second, you've had hopefully duly refreshed. And if you are just joining us, we are delighted to have you with us for this important debate on how to tackle barriers to employment for forced migrants, and also what sort of solutions are being tested. So first of all, or before that, I'd like also to mention the fact that we are actively tweeting and promoting this session online. We are using the AccessConf as a hashtag, so please help us reach out and spread the word about today's conference. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dawn Lyle, who will chair this session. Dawn is a Swansea-based business owner and the co-founder of For the Region, an alliance that brings together people, communities, businesses and organisation in collaboration for the greater good of South West Wales. Now, I'm just checking on the chat to see if Dawn is here. No, actually, she is here. So over to you, Dawn.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to help to co-chair this session. As you've said, I'm really passionate about how employers and businesses can be a force for good in our region, and I think one of the ways that businesses can be a force for good is by helping to create those employment opportunities and helping people into employment in fantastic progressive businesses, particularly here in Swansea and across South West Wales. So I think my role for this session is to introduce some brilliant speakers we've got to give us a bit of insight, and then I'll be helping to facilitate one of the breakout sessions later on. But without further ado, may I introduce the first of this afternoon's speakers, and that's Hannah Sabatia from Refugee Employment Journey, talking about supporting people into employment opportunities. Hannah, are you here?
I'm here.
Great. We'd love to hear from you first of all then, and for everyone to know there will be an opportunity for some Q&A at the end of our four speakers, so do make your questions in the chat and we'll try and pick those up once the speakers have spoken. So welcome, Hannah.
Okay. Hazel, was there a PowerPoint, please? Oh, there we are. Okay, thank you. So,
Hannah, sorry, will you press the take control button?
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, I'm in control now. Okay, thank you. So do I need to do anything else? Just carry on, yeah?
Yeah, just carry on and just progress the slides.
Okay. So my name is Hannah Sabatia. I'm originally from Kenya, and I arrived in Swansea in 2007. So today I just thought I could mention a few things, a little bit about my little journey, and at the end I'll mention a little bit about how, or the people I support. I came to Swansea in 2009, and all of you know 2010, Swansea became a city of sanctuary. And the idea was helping people to feel welcome, access to services, and integrate. So I feel I was part of that at the initial stage. And feeling welcomed, I was given an opportunity to volunteer with the City of Sanctuary. So I sat in many management committee meetings. I was the vice chair, and a really enjoyable opportunity there. So different organizations at that time had signed into support Swansea City of Sanctuary movement, and some of those organizations I remember, like the DPIA or the Displaced People in Action, they helped me through with my NARIC assessment, you know, the equating of education papers with the NARIC. And that opportunity was great because then I was able to know where my Kenyan certificates level with the UK, and I was actually shocked to know they are the same. I think because English is our language of learning. And then with that kind of volunteering and taking part in many activities, I was able to to do a postgraduate certificate in education. That was quite rare for an asylum seeker to access that. But I think there was a small project with the St. David's University where they gave that opportunity to asylum seekers and refugees. So let me talk about after being granted. Definitely, as many of my colleagues or those who've been through this process will say, the challenges include lack of confidence. So my background being nutrition, I felt I had something to offer, and I was really excited because I love nutrition and I know many people benefit from a nutrition education, and that's something I wanted to do. Now, as you notice, I've just come from volunteering from different organizations, and then now the confidence to go to nutrition is not there. Why? Because I haven't had any opportunity to have any contact with anybody who can direct me that way. There was no way I could find training which I could refresh my course or my skills so that I can be useful. So I tried through the job center, and I remember them sending me to one of the projects in that was based in Kevin Coyd at that time, and I did go there several times, but it didn't seem perhaps to understand why I'm going there, and that didn't go through. And I remember also attending the university with their open day in the university, Swansea University. But from the discussions they were having, I realized my degree was a bit older than what they were looking for. So I was more than 10 years old and having not practiced anything during that time. So apart from the work I did in Kenya. So then I was sort of not included in what was happening. So so the training, I feel at that point was necessary for me to be able to go to this, to apply these skills that I loved, and I knew I was able to do well in. So how did I get to start working? So as soon as I was granted, the skills I gained from volunteering became very handy, and that's how I got myself fast to the first job, which was a part-time job with the Share Tower. And that homeless job working with asylum seekers who are homeless became a very good small stepping stone for me. And from there, when I finished my 2-year contract, and I was able to eye another opportunity, and I found that post of development officer, the Better Welcome Swansea project as SCVS. So that was a great opportunity for me. But as you all can see, this is not the line I had perhaps intended in the first place. But as many people have talked this morning, you just first take what comes. But even if it's not what you were planning, you go for it, and you don't know where it's leading. But eventually, I think there comes a time when you know where you're going. So while here, I've been here in a Better Welcome, another opportunity for a secondment has arrived, and I've been seconded to a role with the Health Board, which is an outreach officer, which I felt it's closer to health and nutrition somehow. But we are living in COVID time, so that is a priority at the moment to help people get the right messages and understand why it's important to keep those messages going. So I feel this is a useful conference because we are able to pass on information. We old timers, we've seen how it's been, and now the people we are supporting, then how can we apply this to help them? Now, if you look at this slide, it looks so messy because it's the backdrop of what people go through before they can be think of working or even employment or education. I can't read all of them because I know my 5 minutes time won't allow, but you can all see that it's a mess. It's normally a messy backdrop for everyone who is going through this process. And in there you can see, if granted leave, they face lack of access to jobs and sufficient incomes. These are challenges facing the people I am supporting. And these are the challenges I faced while I was in my journey. So I would say finally that I don't have the solution to these problems, but this conference, you had over 130 people listening and watching. So that is an opportunity for people to air and to give ideas. Then I feel giving opportunities early is a good idea, because I feel my nutrition, if when I came, I was identified, then I would have been channeled that way. And I thought at this point that if it's possible to come up with a job shortage list in the country, then it is possible to have a log with how many nutritionists are coming from this route. How many doctors, how many things like that. And that can help people a lot from the beginning. Early training and prompts. So if I am a nutritionist, where are there nutritionists out there who can give me the prompts or way forward? That link would help a lot of professionals who are coming through this route. Then a lot of time is wasted while people are trying to settle down. This brings about the issue of housing. I know a certain pediatrician from Africa who's taken so long to settle down, to find a place to live after he's been granted leave to remain. And these are serious personal experiences I've seen where I worked with Better Welcome. Then finally, volunteering opportunities, and there we are. That's where I started. Thank you very much for giving me the chance.
Thank you, Hannah. Fantastic insights there. And as we get into the breakout rooms, we can unpack some of that more. But I really appreciate what you've said about the importance of volunteering to get into opportunities, but also matching skills gaps with the skills that people have and highlighting, the importance of those skills and what we're missing that refugees and asylum seekers can bring into the workplace. Thank you very much for that. Next up with a short presentation is David Bacon from the Welsh Refugee Coalition. David, are you ready to take us away?
Yes, I'm going to talk about the Welsh Refugee Coalition's priorities that it's seeking to promote. It's a grouping of over 50 organisations promoting a welcome for refugees and asylum seekers in Wales, including many people on this call. And we regularly speak to each other, the Welsh Government, local authorities. And to guide the work, we produced a manifesto document for the last Senedd election. And this gave, where's my button? Yes. This gave a very high priority to employment support. It's a critical one, not just for long-term success and work, but it has many other knock-on ripple effects on well-being, on health, other things. And perhaps particularly calling for a holistic across the sectors, evaluating the support that's here at the moment and implementing 2 excellent Welsh Government reports from last year, some of which does what Hannah said, actually map the existing skills that are here in Wales. More specifically, again reflecting Hannah, more opportunities for work for asylum seekers. That is a right to work in those specific shortage occupations where we can make the case in Wales. Career pathways for those who come here with existing experience, which means some complicated things: professional recognition, placement in sectors, skills assessment. We find that many refugees actually start their own business or employ themselves, and so there should be a strong strand of support for that area. Again, volunteering has been really highlighted already. Creating more opportunities, providing guidance for accessing it, and raising awareness of what's there. Language support, many people have referred to today. Also progression, I think what Stephanie called meaningful work, and Hannah's talked about that. So it's not just the first job, it's the next things. More cultural awareness, and it's a number of people have said some of the volunteering helps with that. And there's a service that talks to every new refugee in Wales. We want that to be stronger and expanded to make sure that it can give some advice on employment opportunities. To try and make those ideas more real, we held a workshop in April. The majority of folk were asylum seekers and refugees, with a number of frontline colleagues as well. And they really emphasise this point about low awareness. There's some fantastic projects, but loads of people really don't know about them. And we're also not sure how widespread those lovely examples are. And therefore, we need more clarity on what's available where and the scale. And to achieve that, and we've already started doing things to help, we want partnership between the third and public sector particularly, especially so that we have clear communication, but also so that everybody's resources are used well. More opportunities for asylum seekers. I'm just repeating what folk have said already. But not least this point that Hannah said, build the skills, build the networks, and it's not just in the refugee sector, reaching out to employers in the sector that a person is interested in. So then they've begun to get known, and that leads to work. There's this really difficult transition to the first job. And there's some very good solutions, and hopefully Deb will talk about some of those for the first, 3 or 4 months. But it'd be lovely if those sorts of approaches really focus on that transition were more widespread. Access to employers, we've again touched on. Some of the folk there really felt, apart from the cultural barriers, there might be sometimes a feeling of prejudice that needs to be overcome. We've already mentioned the point about pathways to careers, and it's not just training, but some degree of advocacy. So in certain sectors, it's possible to get work. There are barriers, but they may not be real ones. They're more bureaucratic. So if somebody stands up and makes the case, they can sort of make a way through. Again, progression, which means a second or third job, not the first job. And then finally, again, repeating what Hannah said, and she's one of the people who said it in April, how difficult the asylum journey is, and as a way to help through that, more mentoring and buddying, teaming up with somebody who's been through it, who knows about it, maybe an asylum seeker refugee, maybe actually somebody who's in work who was born in Britain. So those are some of the ideas. We're not stopping with April. We're cracking on. We've been working with Alan and others about this conference, and also with the Welsh Government. So this is very much a milestone. Looking forward to the rest of the day.
Thank you, David. I mean, the work of the Welsh Refugee Coalition in putting together that manifesto is so useful and gives some really practical actions, as you've outlined there, and really important to just highlight what some of those opportunities are to make it a lot easier, particularly with particular sectors. And I can see someone's mentioning in the chat, pathways into construction, for example, and how can we make that easier. Fantastic presentation. Thank you for keeping to time. So next up, a 5-minute presentation from, I think we've got 2 names here, Roger Nyantu and Tesfalem Yamani from RETAS, talking specifically about those barriers to employment. So Roger, are you ready to go?
Yes.
Roger?
Oh, sorry, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Great.
I had to unmute myself, yes.
Great, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
My name is Roger Nyantu. I'm the CEO of RETAS Lead, which is Refugee Education Training Advice Service. I will briefly say that we work to support the social and economic development of asylum seekers and refugees. Both go together, social and economic development. And I avoid the word integration because I had a conversation with my chair. I say integration is more about, it's an ongoing process. And I think we need to talk more about development. And we did agree. And it will be a big mistake for me to sit here and start saying the barriers, because this is a fantastic conference. Since this morning, I've realized that this is the first conference I've seen that we got more expert by experience talking than other people coming and delivering the conference. It's fantastic. And I will say, I'm here with my colleague, he will have to say a lot. We got a long list of barriers, and some of them have been covered already. I won't waste my time going through it, because talking about barriers to employment, it can be a book, it can be many pages. And this is not just what we went through. We sat down thinking, oh, what can we put down? You could see the list is very, very long, and a lot of them have been covered already. I'm not going to go through it. Just to set the most important, my colleague will touch on that a little bit. The job center, the government, they will say, okay, they do something to remove these barriers. But my question is how they do it. The how is very important. We all do something to support. I've heard some good, fantastic things this morning. For example, I wrote down something that was said by Jane, recognizing the person before seeing his refugee status, meaningful employment said by Stephanie. I was happy to hear a lot from Mariam, someone that we supported for her to be able to get her job with her application form and her interview technique based on the scheme that we got with the National City of Sanctuary. I think you could see the list. I'm glad you were going to put the presentation on your website. I will leave Tesfalem to say a little bit how we do to overcome all these barriers. Tesfalem, over to you.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, so I will just be very brief. So against the background of the wider and broader institutional challenges in joining and getting a sustainably decent job opportunities in the UK job market, some of the activities and support we provide in RETAS as part of our support into a meaningful employment and education pathways are. I'll just brief them mention them very briefly. One of which is our IAG, Information, Advice and Guidance, where we provide general education from ESOL to all the way to university and college, training, employment training, training on requalification, and general employment advice. We also do run job skills courses in RETAS. We organize short courses on job skills, job hunting, what the UK labor market is, what interview preparation means, job applications, what is person specification. When I first came to the UK, there was a job application, job vacancy, and then I just submitted an essay without even mentioning any of the person specifications that were mentioned. I didn't know what the nature of the job application process and the interview process were. So we do run, on the base of our experiences, we do run job skills courses. We also do run employability workshops. I will mention on one of very, very important employability pathways that we have, and we work in partnership with our colleagues in the sector. So we do run employability workshops, how people can prepare for their interviews, what tricky questions they might expect, how they might present themselves, time preparation. We do have job placement opportunities and initiatives. We work with local employers, colleges, and universities. We also do have a very fantastic apprenticeship program where we work in partnership with our colleagues. We work in with partnership with an organization called Growing Points. I don't know if you have heard of Growing Points. It's one of the fantastic organizations in the UK. What we do through one of the apprenticeship programs we work with them is we work as the referral organization in RETAS in Leeds, where we refer many people to join the NHS as clinical support workers. You will know from all the conversations and the experiences that were shared today, people come to the UK with really, really high skills, extensive work experience and qualifications. When it comes to joining the NHS in the UK, then the bureaucratic requirements are very, very difficult. So the apprenticeship scheme is for people to join the NHS, do a full-time paid 1 year training, by the end of which they will qualify as clinical support workers, and then they get sustainable, secure job with the NHS. We also work with the Home Office, which is the security authority industry, in offering people training opportunities where they will qualify as security officers. If we were to go to Leeds City Centre with Roger, everyone in every retail shop, you will see everyone saying Roger, Roger, waving their hands. It's one of our fantastic opportunity schemes that we support refugees to get a job into the security industry. We work with our local partners through the New Roots project. Again, it's an employment and training opportunity project. We provide ESOL classes and ILS for people to go to uni, then get requalifications, nursing, engineering, and get into the UK job market. I think we have talked a lot. We would be very happy to answer any questions or provide further clarifications on some of the initiatives and points we mentioned. I think, but I should stop here. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us.
If I could just add if I could just add something quickly.
Yeah.
I would say something. I myself, I came to this country as I'm a qualified pharmacist. I'm not doing the job I'm doing. I was supposed to be doing. Listening to Hannah, it was quite fascinating to see how she did manage to go through the experience exactly what I've experienced. Something I've learned in this country, they talk a lot about opportunity. For me, equal opportunity is about removing what and how do we do to remove those barriers. That is a big question mark. I think it's really, really important. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you both for, sorry for the time pressure that we're under, but you've covered a lot of ground there, and it's clear that Ritas are doing some amazing support work. And like you, I feel that, fantastic conference today, hearing so many different voices and talking about what we can do to remove those barriers. I'm going to introduce Kate next from Down to Earth, which is an amazing local project. And Kate, I think you've got Carlos with you as well. And you're going to be talking about moving forward, learning skills and gaining experience to improve the employability of refugees. So Kate, if you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dawn. I don't have, there it is.
There we go. And you should be able to press the take control button at the top of the screen, and then you can move your slides on.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. I'd just like to thank you for inviting me to speak with you today on behalf of Down to Earth Project. It's been a wonderful day listening to everyone's experiences and everyone's thoughts and ideas, and also an introduction to so many unique and helpful organizations. I'm looking forward to making contact, hopefully with some of you as the days go forward. So I'd like to start by explaining a little bit about Down to Earth, what we do, and then speak to you about our work over the last 10 years in our community to provide opportunities for forced migrants in the areas of Swansea and Neath Port Talbot to engage in outdoor training programs. So created in 2005, Down to Earth has been working within the community to provide inclusive training programs to disadvantaged and vulnerable individuals. We use outdoor practical activities as a vehicle to deliver our unique approach to community engagement. Our innovative ways of working are evidence-based and underpinned by 10 years of clinical research. So on Friday, we celebrated the completion of our latest project, which was 6 eco-restorative social housing units built in partnership with Coastal Housing. And when you hear from Carlos later, you'll see that he was a crucial part in engaging the community in the recruitment of this training program. So all these houses and all these buildings that you see in these pictures here are examples of our work, and they've been constructed with the contribution of hard work and skill of refugees and asylum seekers in our community. So the UK charity Breaking Barriers reports that employment is the #1 factor in successful long-term integration into society. We all know this, we've heard about this already. And migrants in the UK experience unemployment rates 4 times the UK national average. So Down to Earth has sought to address some of these barriers to employment and training in our communities through our training programs. In the last 5 years, we've worked with over 240 refugees and asylum seekers in our community and awarded 97 individuals accreditation in different areas such as ESOL, sustainable woodland management, green woodwork, and work experience in the past 5 years. Excuse me. So we know it's about the training. Participation in an 8-week program with us will entail learning a variety of practical skills, such as working with tools, from hand tools for land management and horticulture and woodland management to power tools for sustainable construction tasks. We learn about health and safety in the workplace, which PPE is required, rules and regulations to keep you safe in the workplace, emergency procedures, manual handling. We teach skills in woodland management, which are sustainable methods of managing local and community woodlands. We learn to use certain tools, different methods, how to abide by site regulations, etc. So whilst we know it's about the training, we know that it's also about the learning. Sorry, it's not moving. Okay. So we also know it's about the learning together. We also focus on developing and enhancing a number of soft skills with our learners, such as building self-confidence, which Hannah mentioned and Funmi mentioned earlier was critical to securing employment and getting involved in the community. So we build self-confidence by getting involved, trying new activities. We focus on things like teamwork, improving mental health, reducing clinical anxiety and depression, social inclusion and integration, an opportunity to make new friends and meet others in the community, doing meaningful work outdoors, which has been mentioned. It's that need to do meaningful work and contribute. Emotional literacy learning, how to make your voice heard, and the differences of how we express emotions here in the UK, cooking and eating together, and trying a number of adventure activities. Feedback from our participants say the most important factor of the program is the chance to practice English as a second language. So work on conversational language, the names of equipment and tasks being used and undertaken. The opportunity to practice English in a work situation, as well as in an informal and casual environment. The best part of the programs, though, participants say, was feeling valued and having a chance to escape from the daily pressures of life and just being present and having fun. So in 2004, a study by the Institute for Public Policy Research found that proficiency in English was the #1 barrier to gaining employment in the UK. And 15 years on, we know this is still the main barrier to employment. Access to English classes can often take a long time, and that's why Down to Earth has come up with this idea: get people involved, teach them skills, and give them an opportunity to practice English. But at the same time, we can help fill in gaps in CV and give people a bit of an eye into the lack of knowledge of UK work culture and how to overcome that. It's about managing expectations and what it's like to work in the UK, the culture, the nuances, etc. So our work in the community has given Down to Earth the opportunity to work and share experiences with individuals seeking sanctuary and a chance to rebuild their lives in Wales. And during this time, we've listened to feedback from the community, worked with support agencies and service providers to help overcome some of these barriers. As we work together, we learn together how we can provide more support and better services to refugees and asylum seekers in our communities. It's our hope and our intention moving forwards that we can work to not only lower these barriers, but remove them altogether, to engage, employ, and integrate refugees and asylum seekers in our communities so that we can get good things done in our communities together. So I'd just like to leave you in closing with a few words about his experience from an amazing person who's been crucial, as I said, to engaging individuals within the community in our social housing project. Carlos.
First time I heard about this project was through Swansea Council Voluntary Service, because it's the first point of contact anytime asylum seekers or refugee came to Swansea. So I never imagined the kind of experience I would have. But I love this kind of all together full package things when you experience community, helping others people, and at the same time learning a lot of things. And it's changed life and experience, I have to say it is.
So thank you for your time.
Wow, that's a really inspiring example, what you guys are doing at Down to Earth. You know, it's an exemplary project, and thank you, Kate, for talking to us about it. You can see, just looking at your photographs, what a life-changing experience that is for so many people. And not only learning those really important work-based skills, but as you say, all the relationship skills and just being outdoors and contributing in a meaningful way. Thank you so much for that. We've got a couple of minutes now. If there were any questions that people wanted to ask.
Yes, so far we did not receive any questions in the chat, but if people would like to ask any questions or make any comments, we've literally got 2 minutes, and so this is your window into any questions or comments on what our lovely presenters have covered so far.
Is that a hand up there? Is that Carlos's hand up?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, is Carlos able to come in there?
Yeah, he can turn his mic and camera on now.
Yeah, Carlos.
Oh, thank you so much.
There we are. Oh, you're here in real life. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And nice to meet you. Thank you, Kate. Well, just in a couple of minutes to summarize my experience volunteering at Down to Earth and in general from different places here across Swansea. I wonder if you can, you can see this.
Yeah, we can see that.
So it was my challenge. And I think it's a challenge shared with many other asylum seekers when arrived in Swansea, eventually when became refugees. There is a decision to study to fulfill our aspirations or to work to fulfill our needs. So volunteering is the bridge between them. So we can align our expectations. I show a different one now. Is how we can bridge our expectations with reality and as well our aspirations, our skills. So volunteering is a pathway to doing that. And as well, I found myself with 3 crucial things. One of them is having opportunities to volunteer and to build a CV. Second one is to having mentors showing me the path to find that, but as well the personal commitment. So I wonder if there are any more initiatives to bridge asylum seekers, refugees, and engage into employment properly. Why not a sanctuary employer hub to give us the opportunity to build careers? As well as we are looking for University of Sanctuaries, College of Sanctuaries, we need the chance to have real life experience and to build careers here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlos. I love those illustrations you've done there. It helps to really make your point. I think we're talking this afternoon about the idea of businesses of sanctuary and how more employers can get on board with creating those opportunities. And I think, as you say, that's so important. But really loved what you said there about the difference between working now for what you need in the short term, but studying for the long term and finding the bridge between those two things. I'm not sure how much time we have left for further questions.
I think we've got only 1 minute to go, and I think we've got one question coming from Francesca, and if people could respond in less than 30 seconds to that. And the question is, what are the key challenges you face, in terms of organizing these projects and training? So what are the key challenges you face in terms of funding, politics, time, and what advice might you have for other organizations trying to do the same?
So can we ask Kate that question then? What advice you might have for other organisations trying to do what you've done at Down to Earth?
Thank you. So over the last 10 years, one of the biggest issues for us was identifying the barriers in order to provide more specific and specialised support to get refugees and asylum seekers in our areas engaged in these projects. And once we were able, and that's exactly what this conference is doing. So, and by doing that, we could apply for the appropriate funding. We could work engagement into our funding proposals by doing community consultations. We found out what were the priorities amongst the community and apply for funding as such. So, one other area, it's transport to get involved in these projects. So that was a big barrier for us.
Yeah, because you're on the Gower, so transport particularly important.
Yeah.
And maybe Roger in under 30 seconds.
Yes. Can I also mention that one of the barriers, one of the challenges, I know funding is key, but sometimes we spend time training people because, for example, for doctors, we did manage to train over 50 doctors since Ritas was set up. But sometimes the challenge is that people will complete the IELTS, the PLAF1, PLAF2, the main qualification, but the clinical attachment is a challenge. That means relationship with the public sector, with the NHS, sometimes is important. Talking to key people is really, really important as well.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I think, okay, we've got less than 15 seconds for the very last intervention from Tesfilm. So please, the floor is with you for 15 seconds. So you're muted.
Oh, you need to unmute, Tesfilm. Can you do that?
Yes.
No.
No.
One more time.
Sorry, guys. Just to come back to Carlos' point, I think
Thank you.
The work of NHS in Leeds in terms of how we work it with them through the Hidden Talents program could be an example of sanctuary employers. They have given a really good offer, financial offer in taking and paying apprentices throughout the year until they get their qualifications and then join the workforce as permanent paid staff. So that could be an example of sanctuary employer, a big public employer, and then they have got with the financial offer. We can have further conversations if need be on that.
Thank you. I think we are already 5 minutes behind, so I have to apologize. I have to move us on into the next segment. So thank you very much, Carlos, Dawn, Kate, Roger, Tesfilm, and the rest. Thank you very much for all your contributions. Thank you very much, everyone, for all your input. So now we move on to our themed employment presentations, which will be chaired by Alan Thomas. So over to you, Alan.
Thanks very much, Ahmad, and thanks to Dawn and all the other speakers. It's really wonderful to hear all these things. In about 20 minutes, we have quite lengthy breakouts, so you will all have a chance to get involved in the discussion. But the next three presentations, they're like, each of them is a kind of introduction to one of the breakouts, so you can choose which one you want to go to. And the three topics are employment support, entrepreneurship, and then businesses of sanctuary, the question of the role of businesses, how to support businesses, how to get them involved. And the first one of those, we have Deborah Coos and Rahim El Habachi from Ethnic Youth Support Team. And Deborah is the BME Invest project coordinator there. That's a project which does a placement program offering paid work experience. And Deborah has been a career coach for a long time and has a lot of experience before that project even. Rahim, who is speaking with her, is a gay Moroccan refugee. He's a committee member of Glitter Cymru, a dancer, a writer, and an HIV positive activist. And he was a valued volunteer at East, worked with Deborah. Over to you.
Thank you. I think we've got a slideshow coming up. Thank you. So Rahim and I have just been texting each other, and we just need you to know that most of what we're going to say has already been said in one form or another. We're saying the same messages, and can I just say that Rahim and I have worked together for some years and we're still saying the same messages. So we're really hopeful that in the breakout rooms we will work together to come up with some solutions for some of these areas and some of these barriers. So we've split the presentation into three parts. First of all, if we're looking at asylum seekers who, as Carlos has said, they're preparing for employment, they're thinking about study, they're thinking about work from the time that they're in this country. And it's really important that we try and get those people who want to move on as soon as possible. Hannah's experience there, you know, I want to get in, I want to be doing things, I want to become involved and not being able to. So over to Rahim and some of his experiences.
Hi everyone, and thank you for inviting me today and being here. Like Deborah said, and the others, we're gonna repeat ourselves here, but repeating is a sense of remembering what we said for a longer time. Asylum seekers, from my experience, I've been an asylum seeker for 4 years before getting my refugee status, and I felt like in the 4 years I was lost. I was not made use of. I felt like I was just set in a corner, rotting. And if you think 4 years is a long 10 years and even more. So we've created some solutions, me and Deborah, as placements. I think placements are crucial for people to not only develop skills, but develop the confidence to work in the UK and gain more qualifications. They can also provide a sense of belonging. And one thing that we talked about with Deborah is the importance of mental health. And I know Kate has is vulnerable and is very weak, and also like the support to provide that mental health is really lacking here in Wales, and the waiting lists are longer. And putting work aside or placements can ease that process a bit. I think one of the issues we talked about is every time we talk about asylum seekers, we always talk about volunteering and how volunteering is important. But sometimes the conversation of volunteering becomes mandatory rather voluntarily, which is something that I am against completely, because the word volunteer should be coming from the person himself. And also, like, we know that asylum seekers come here with a lot of talents, but they have to choose to use that talent or not be forced to use it. One of the things that I just remembered now while in this conference is sometimes we ask asylum seekers to come and share their experiences, and that can take a toll on asylum seekers, and that's an expertise that we are able. And you know how public speaking is really crucial and is career driven. Sometimes it can be somebody's career to be a public speaker and influence a lot of people. I think we can move to the second slide. But also,
so go on.
I remember something about volunteering as well. There is only like a few volunteering opportunities that are really important and good, and sometimes you feel yourself that you are repeating yourself, and there is a cap. And also, from a charity point of view, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of resources to train the volunteers. Go on, Deborah.
So what we were looking at then is, well, when status is received, what immediately do we need to do? So going back to Carlos, we asked Carlos if he'd like to take part in a placement that we were running as part of our active inclusion strand 2 at BME Invest in East. So he was able to come into work with us for 16 hours a week for 16 weeks to get paid for that as a way. This thing what Kate was saying about looking at the UK work culture, looking at the whole process of becoming employed, getting a job and so on. And this is one of the things we've been able to do with the European funding managed by WCVA. However, that type of funding is coming to an end now. We're leaving Europe, and we really need these types of placements or internships that are paid and are giving valued work. I have to say that Carlos was underutilized. His skill set is amazing, and we weren't able to provide a placement in the type of work that would fully utilize him. However, it was giving him experience of being with others. Raheem, do you want to move on to the next slide?
Yes.
So if they have to prove themselves.
Yeah. I think, like Deborah said, placements are really important, and also, like, to echo what Carlos said, when I received my refugee status after 4 years, I was so lost. I didn't know what to do. Should I go to like the same thing that Carlos talks about, and I feel also the pressure of like Hannah talks about, looking for accommodation and looking for applying for me is refugees, or especially new refugees who got their status, a break of like 6 months just to figure out what they want to do with their lives, especially because if like there's a rush, and sometimes in that rush, like Hannah spoke about earlier, we find ourselves doing low-skilled jobs that we are not trained on, and that can make the process for wealth is also important. To conclude, I think if we remember that refugee is a legal status rather a personal characteristic, I think a lot of things can be done. And going back to speakers and expertise. Tomorrow, I think there is a conference about housing. I was asked to speak at it. It declined because the condescendency of the person who invited me was beyond me. They said that my English is good, that I'm well spoken, that I'm all that, and I know that there are compliments, but it sounded so condescending to me. And sometimes we need to know how to speak in picture. Sounded like the Daily Mail to me.
I just want to pick up finally on what Kate was saying about addressing the barriers and managing expectations. We do see people who have enormous expectations, and aren't they the expectations of all of us? Because we want somewhere safe to live, we want to be meaningful in community. And perhaps, that's what we need to be looking for, is that this is what we all want. Thank you.
And
Thank
just
you
finally,
very much
before
indeed.
we conclude, just to add just one phrase, and I think the proof of ourselves over and over that there is a lack of communication between organizations and a lack of including the community who is affected by this, and that's why I think our voices are being repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated again, and I think this conference is a proof of that, and hopefully we can move on forward.
Thank you very much, Rahim and Deborah. I was very happy to let that go on beyond, I suppose, 5 minutes, because are things that we have to remember very much, particularly your point, Rahim, about how it's possible to be condescending without meaning to, and really we have to avoid that one. Now, you will have a chance to hear more from them and to talk with them. So because of that, I don't mind if we go on a little bit at this stage. It just makes the breakout slightly shorter. So our second topic for breakout is about entrepreneurship. Now Saskia Wolders she's also a career coach, and she works currently with Centre for African Entrepreneurship here in Swansea, and she has been, I think, putting together a video based on some interviews with refugee entrepreneurs and people who would like to be entrepreneurs. And I don't know whether you're going to show that video now or in the breakout group, Saskia. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to hear all the people at the conference. And Rahim, we have to get in touch with each other, because I'm going to be in this other breakout room and I really, really want to talk to you. So thank you very much for all your valid points. Yes, so let's talk business for 5 minutes. I help people find a job and I help them start their own business. So as Alan said, I work for the CAE's Refugee Women Empowerment Project, which is supported by the European Social Fund and the Welsh Government. The project takes a person-centered approach to help every individual, all of them 25 years and older, and long-term unemployed. I have to say, there is so much groundwork that has been done already when this person comes to our project by the many organizations that are present at this conference today. So we listen and we help a person make a realistic plan, realistic goals, and also try to build up their confidence and support identifying their transferable skills. This project started 6 months ago, but I personally, as a freelance job coach, have been supporting people mainly from a Black, Asian or ethnic minority background for more than 10 years. In 2015, I decided to become a self-employed career coach, and I quickly familiarized myself with the different business structures. I registered myself as a sole trader with HMRC. I got the website, the logo, the email address, insurance, and started trading and networking to find customers. Of course, I had low startup costs. I had savings. I had money for childcare and internet, the financial cushion of my family to fall back on. I had clients already lined up as I built up a network of contacts working as a job coach in Swansea for many years already. And I understand that my white privilege helped. So having taken that plunge as a businesswoman 6 years ago, I since have become even more impressed with business owners. It takes grit and braveness to be able to make a living as a shop owner, a director of a limited company, an employer. And especially in the last 1.5 years, it's been really, really difficult for businesses. They had to adapt, shut down, or roll with the punches. Now, fortunately, according to the World Bank, the UK, pandemic aside, is one of the easiest countries in the world to start a business. I am passionate about connecting businesses, people, higher education, government and third sector organisations working together for a prosperous Wales. And I love working with entrepreneurial people from a refugee background who are committed to contribute to this society. So to set up a business here, you don't need to have your prior education translated like people talked before in the other sessions. You don't have to sit an exam. If you speak the language of business, so I mean, if you know the basics from your home country, like profit margins, unique selling point, and what problem you can solve for your customer, you don't even need to be fluent in English if English isn't your first language. There are amazing refugee business people in Swansea and in Wales who are not shouting that they are from a refugee background, because they are first and foremost business people focusing on making a profit and growing their business. There are refugees with great transferable skills who are ready to start a business for as many different reasons as we non-refugees have. So in the meeting after this talk, you will hear a conversation with Shahavar, who became a freelance translator after the confirmation of his refugee status. When he and I first talked on the phone a few weeks ago, we talked about what it's like, of course, being self-employed, and we shared stories about the refugees who we know who have set up their business and who are trying to set up their business currently, their own organization, their own brick and mortar shop. We talked about startup funding, cash flow, invoicing, etc., etc. It's a broad subject to talk about in just a few minutes, as you can imagine. So what do you do if you were a successful business owner in your home country and you come to Wales and you want to start up again, but you're not familiar with the regulations here or have no startup funding? What do you do when you have become self-employed in Wales, but the service contracts go to the same business in Wales, even though you know you can do a better and cheaper job? So I am inviting you to join us in this breakout room afterwards. Well, you will help Shahavar and me, because I do not know a lot about business. So help us identify the obstacles people from a refugee background face and how we can help them improve their chances to become successful business owners. We will come up with 3 recommendations at the end of our session to help overcome these barriers. Thank you.
Wonderful. Saskia, thank you very much indeed for that introduction to your session. Now, the third one is about businesses in a different way. So not about setting up your own business, but about how we can involve businesses and indeed employers, it's not only private businesses, how they can be involved in and how they can be assisted if they want to help with this process of refugee employment, how it can be done. And our speaker for that, or our facilitator, is Nadir Taha, who works for Restart, which is a Welsh Government employment support programme. But his particular job is as employer engagement officer for this region, which includes Swansea. Nadir, over to you to introduce your session.
Hi, you can hear me now, yeah? Okay, hi. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm very pleased to be here and to see familiar faces. And I would like to take the opportunity to send hi quick for Rahim. It's been ages for me to see this person. And I'll say hi, Rahim. Maybe we'll catch up after this meeting. I'll go quickly, and I'll try to keep the time frame. I know you're running short of the time. I'll try to speak briefly and not to go beyond my 5 minutes, which I have been given. If you allow me to have 1 minute to give you, in a nutshell, about our project, which is the Restart project. The Restart project is a Welsh Government which has created Ban Wales Refugee Integration Project, which is the Restart, which is a mixture of employment and education in English language tuitions. The project based in Wales in the 4 asylum dispersal areas, which is Cardiff, Swansea, Newport and Wrexham. And normally there will be holistic assessment in order to see the level of English and what type of work our beneficiaries were doing in their country of origins and what they wanted to do in the country after getting this statement. I truly believe the project is showing the Welsh government commitment to make Wales into a nation of sanctuary throughout inviting and working with businesses to achieve this. I will run directly to the engagement with businesses. When I accept to take this post, I thought, well, and I'm quoting myself here, and I'll be working with the Welsh Government, and it will be the right place to help the community I belong to. I'm coming from a refugee background. I honestly thought the job will be straightforward, not difficult and not easy. And as I'm going to work for the government, thinking of the Sudanese perspective, my country of origin, I thought like the government in Sudan can create 100 million jobs in the next day. And believe me, it is not real jobs. But they can create that job, and they will tell going to convince all the people it is valid and legit jobs. But when I started the job with the Welsh Government, and I find out, listen, the businesses are not taking orders from the Welsh Government. They're free. It's free country. They can hire whom they want, and they can refuse to hire whom they want. What I'm trying to say here, the job was very difficult to engage and to find the right company and the businesses who will be willing to hire refugees. We have created toolkits, and we also have a presentation where we tried to misbusting and straightening out some common misconceptions about refugees and employment, working with all different departments inside the Welsh Government and the businesses representative, including the engagement of the Institute of Directors, which is the head of business Wales. And I mentioned here in person Lloyd Griffiths, the national director. And we will be emailing and contacting wide range of employments, all level, entry-level types and all sectors, food, warehouses, sales sectors, organization, banks, NHS, constructions, insurance companies, and not to forget to mention this mostly happen after checking what our beneficiaries list in order to find the right match and the right candidate, because the first and the last solution decision is our beneficiaries' decision. We're not forcing them to choose the job, but they wanted they direct us of what type of job they wanted to do. In general, I really think the project worked very well within the difficult time we're having, and now with the pandemic and the uncertainty facing the majority of the businesses. But we still have managed to secure quite a good number of employment for our beneficiaries around the country, and of course here in Swansea where I'm based. I'll try to point here some of main finding of our engagement. well, first experience can be very, very powerful due to unfamiliarity with the refugee cohort. What I'm trying to say here, like most of the people we contacted, they never come through the word refugee. They never hire the refugee. Sometimes they never even dealt with a refugee in their real life. So they kind of like scared, and it is normal. We normally like scared of what we don't know. The second thing, which is industry, the need of industry-specific or focal training, and especially the English language and technical skills, was flagged out by many from employers we kind of interact with or we contacted. One of the important findings, and I got that while I'm contacting the employers, is the majority of employers lack the knowledge regarding refugee employment, including how to identify and reach refugee job seekers and what government initiatives are available. And also the employers we contacted, not the majority, but a handful of them, got this fear and prejudice and the unconscious bias. So they normally tend to hire what is easy and familiar. And when I'm saying what easy and familiar here, is definitely not a refugee person. The other things which is like most of the employers were kind of emphasizing on is the lack of English proficiency, and there were a lot of questions about English level, and especially in high-level jobs. And I'm taking, like, for example, NHS as an example, and the certificate as well, and the recognition of the certificate. I know I will be like facilitating, and I'll be in the other room, so maybe I can answer more question in depth. I don't know how many minutes left for me, because I got like one or
just one minute, say.
Yeah, cool.
1 minute.
And I just wanted to quick saying, after contacting a lot of the businesses in the last 1 year, and I think like what we need to do, and I will be talking in depth after, and to highlight and communicate benefit and success stories, as what I see here from all the people who are participating in this, and especially with engagement now with the businesses. They don't know I know like the refugees are talent. I know we have like a lot of skills, and I'm saying we have because I'm one of them, but we don't have that. Don't have maybe the right person, not the right person. Maybe we're not showing as how it needs. So we need this best practice. We need this the success stories to be shown to the businesses. So in order they will believe, because one refugee person is working in a good place here in Wales. I was speaking with last week, and he said like, I don't know what in England, but he lived most of his life here in Wales, and he said like, I'm telling you what, because I was telling him about my post, and he said like, the Welsh people tend to believe each other. So if you want to hire someone in some place, there is some good recommendation need to come from another person, for another fellow person. So that's what we needed now, I think. These success stories, this best practice, and to be shown. And then I think with the quality and with the certificate or the qualification the refugees have in Wales, I think we will create more jobs and more chances for them to do it. I'm happy to continue, but after with when I'll be facilitating through the breakout, and I'll be helping to answer any question or to go in more details. Thank you very much for the time, and thank you very much for having me.
Thanks very much. I'm going to hand over to back to Ahmad to organise our breakout groups.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Nader, Siska, and the rest. So what we are going to do now is that there will now be an option of 3 different parallel sessions following the 3 topics you've just heard. So please click a topic of your choice, which will take you to another room for presentations and discussions. So as I said, you just see on the screen, just pick out the one of your choice, and you'll be taken to that room, and you will have the moderators or the facilitators looking after you there. Right. Okay, as we now have the chair of the plenary. So what I'd like to do now is to invite Dawn Lyle to take us through the feedback, and for people also to kind of, to feedback from the panel sessions and discussions and kind of summarize. So this will be done over the coming 30 minutes or so. So over to you, Dawn.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. We had a great discussion in our breakout room about what it might mean to be a business of sanctuary. But the first group that we'd love to hear some ideas back from, and again, very much focusing on solutions and ideas and opportunities to make some progress, is the employment support breakout room. Who would like to report back on that discussion? Yes, please, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yes.
Right. I had a few technical problems just towards the end, so I shall start off and perhaps Deborah or I will add to what I say. Hope that's okay.
Great.
So we identified a lot of problems, but we tried to come up with solutions. And one of the things was very clear that we know a lot of what works, but we ought to learn now, and we ought to be working harder on how to promote it. We need to make it well known, all the good things that work well, and we have to encourage those with money to promote what does work. One of the issues was around refugees and not having the information, and a lot of suggestion was around job centres plus and working with the actual refugees to make sure that they're primed so that they can make the most of the job centre plus. And also we should be perhaps, I think the suggestion was that a video might be made to help job centres be primed and to be prepared and to be more, to be better informed. We felt that there was a huge issue about mental health and that mental health packages should be drawn up so that we could actually address some of the issues that are the challenges and preventing people going forward with getting jobs that suit them. We had a variety of people, one from the south of England, one from Warwick, and one of the suggestions from the south of England was that women in particular needed childcare facilities, and also particularly that person found that we needed actually to ensure that employers realised that even if there was a language problem, that should not encourage people to have to go into poorer jobs than they were talented for. We need to help them achieve their potential. And I think, if I move on quickly, again, there are examples of support systems which help refugees prepare their CVs, have interview experience before they go for the interviews with businesses. More support is needed. I think that's as far as I got, but I'm sure Deborah can add to that.
Yes. Just at the end, Caris, I noticed you disappeared off the chat. We were also talking about ESOL classes and the strange system we have in this country where most classes will finish in June and then start again in September. And you have to do the 1 year before you can go on to the next year, or you'll put back a year. And so looking at perhaps a more tailored package in the same way that perhaps if you get a job in a local authority where you're expected to have a knowledge of Welsh, there are tailored bespoke packages for members of staff in the local authority to be able to learn Welsh. Well, perhaps we need to have those more tailored packages for ESOL speakers who probably have got jobs waiting for them, but they need a certain level of English. Certainly we're looking at the CSCS card, the fact that a lot of people are work ready, but they need the card and therefore they need access to interpreters at the very beginning, almost like a pre-CSCS card, to get their knowledge of the jargon and the specific language needs and so on. And we know that those classes exist, but they're often quite difficult to get access to find out who's funding them and to get people onto them. So I think one of the main things that came out of this group is there's lots of little things happening all over Wales. There's like a scatter graph of provision, and it's about joining those dots up to try and make sure that everybody has access to them, whether they're living in Llandryn Dodwells or in Rhymney. It's looking at, ease of access, ease of provision. And today, in post-COVID times, certainly online provision could be used perhaps a lot more effectively than it has done in the past.
Thank you both. I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Obviously, the aspiration is to massively scale up the amount of support that's available, and as much as we'd all love to do that, in the meantime, if we could map and properly signpost all the various different resources that are available, that would sort of strengthen the ecosystem. Jenny, your hand is up. Would you like to come in specifically about what we're talking about here on the employment support side of things? I don't know if Jenny is able to unmute.
Yeah, it was just to say that one point that was made was the value, especially in some of the big cities, of having those other languages, because there are large communities you're interacting with who are not all English. So the assumption is that you're always dealing with English speakers, but actually you're often dealing with maybe Arabic, Urdu, or whatever. And if you have that, that's actually a positive skill, and that should be recognised. That was something that came up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, important point there. Does anyone feel we've missed anything specifically about employment support before we move on to talk about entrepreneurship?
If I have got 1 minute, yes. Can I just point out that another point that was made was about trying to find out about somebody's skill set quite early on. And certainly Carlos alluded to the fact that, yes, he has to get a job, but he's also thinking in terms of a future and what he needs to do to get there. So if somebody has a particular skill set, then that's great. They might be able to find work straight away. But if they haven't, how can we use those transferable skills in order to move them on further? And it's about talking through that with specialist advisors, that can actually look to achieve potential for that person.
Great. In our group, which was slightly different, Businesses of Sanctuary, Ben Whitten had an interesting project to talk about. And I wonder, Ben, if you are there, you might share the information about your database with the wider group, because I think it's relevant to this, because you talked about a database of skill sets. I don't know if you're there. If not, let's move on then to the second of the breakout groups, which was entrepreneurship. So Saskia, that was your group. Are you reporting back or one of your colleagues?
I think Sibu and Judith are reporting back. Thank you.
Great. Sibu, I can see you there.
Yeah, Sibu, you can take your mic. You can turn your mic on.
Yeah, okay.
And your camera, if you'd like to.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So in our group, we had a very interesting discussion. We started off by watching a video between Saskia and Shah, who has set up his business as a translator. He's a sole trader. So one of the obstacles there was the language barrier. So having the language to be able to communicate. So one of the things which he did was to go and volunteer with organizations. So he's building his confidence so he can navigate through those barriers to be able to learn the culture, because it's one thing you have to be able to learn the culture when you want to do business within the community, because you're not serving just your community, you're serving the entire community. So you have to be very well versed in what the community culture is. So that's one of the things which he did. And then the major one was the lack of startup funds, lack of startup finances, because most refugees do not have extra resources. They don't have that background when it comes to credit checks to be able to prove to the bank that they can borrow this X amount of money and they are able to pay back. There's no credit history for them. So majority of the lenders are not willing to part with their money because that's a risk. They don't know whether they are going to get their money back or not. So that's a major obstacle which we have discussed in regards to refugee entrepreneurs. The solution for that has come up. We had somebody from Purple Shoots who was in our group. She did mention that they provide funding, not large amounts of money, but if you have a good idea and they can see that your business can take off, they will help you and they'll give you that startup fund. Which was really good. And then the other suggestion was during COVID, like the start of this year, if I'm not mistaken, the government had the barriers grant. So the suggestion was to have a specific fund to help refugee entrepreneurs to start up so they don't have to worry about that financial start. They know that they can rely on the government to give them that kickstart which they need, and then they can move forward. And one of the things as well, which came out in our discussion, was about the courses, because we find that majority of the refugees, they are very skilled. They come here, they were plumbers in their countries, they were electricians, they were doing all these electrician and so forth. But when they come here, they don't have the certificates. Their qualifications do not match the requirement of the UK government. So the discussion there was, the suggestion, is there any fast-track courses which can be made available for them? Because majority of these people, they don't want to go back to college or university for many years to study. And some of them as well, don't have that education background. They don't really want to study, but they are very clued in what they do. They've got the expertise. So what do we do? So best touching on what was being said by in the morning with education providers, university and so forth, they were saying that they are looking into that. So it'd be really good to have that facility. And the other thing as well was about the contracts. So when refugees come in this country, they don't have a network. So, they say in business that you need to know your market. You need to speak the language of the market. And majority of the times, there's a barrier there because they don't know the language of the market. Saskia has already touched on this when she was introducing this breakout room, when she said, you need to know your profit margins, you need to know that jargon of business. So courses, basic courses, which can be set up for refugee entrepreneurs to know then when you're talking about profit margins, this is what you're looking at. And also when you are talking about filing your tax, this is what you're looking for. Because, well, from a personal experience myself, when I started my business, I didn't know that I had to file a tax returns. And before I knew it, I had a fine letter through my door. And I was like, how do I navigate towards this and around this? But I had to ring them and then say, this is my first year. They said, write a letter explaining your circumstances and we'll waive the fee. So it will avoid things like that because people would know what's expected when you set up that business. We moved on to talk about the importance of commissioning. So when government is commissioning the third sector, business people, contracts to also be given to refugee businesses, because there's earlier on somebody touched about the unconscious bias, about the familiarity, not willing to try out what you don't know, because as human beings we tend to gravitate towards what we know, and what we don't know sometimes can be scary. So it's about giving that opportunity to those refugee entrepreneurs to try to trail out new businesses, and giving them a 3 months contract just to try out and see what they can do. At least it gives them that foot on the doorstep, rather than commissioning to the same people over and over again. And also there was, in terms of that, trying out something different, we joined it with, was it Jenny? She pointed out that because of COVID, during the pandemic, a lot of people have come together. We have seen British people from all walks of life coming together to pull together, to help each other, to sustain ourselves throughout the pandemic. So there's been a positive impact in terms of that. So the recommendation was to use that as a positive, because people were willing to come together for the aid of those which they are not familiar with. So why not give them the chance? Since there's this positive momentum already in the air, let's try and open up and give refugee entrepreneurs a chance. And that's what I've got. If I've left off anything, Saskia and Judith, you can help me.
Thank you, Sibu. That was great. Yes, so Dawn also mentioned in the chat before about networking with the business community. I think it would be a wonderful opportunity from this conference that there would be an introduction to the business community about people who are refugee business owners. And like I said in the talk, that sometimes these people go under the radar. You don't know, you're not going to say, hello, I'm a refugee and I'm a business owner. You just say, I'm a business owner. But it would be great to have that sort of networking going. And I know that Dawn is really good at that.
Yeah, I think that's so important for all of us who start businesses, and more so for refugee-owned businesses, is starting to build those relationships so that other local business owners know who you are and trust you. I know, Sibu, you've been very proactive in that, and got to know lots of business people in Swansea and the area, so that you're no longer an unknown quantity. People know you, they like you, and they want to work with you. And there are lots of organisations in Wales and in Swansea running business events, and some of those you have to pay to go to, others are free to attend, but you can look up things like Swansea Business Club and the Federation of Small Businesses and the Institute of Directors, and my own organisation for the region. But it's difficult when you first start in business to put yourself out there and start to do networking, and it's just more skills that you've got to acquire, but it's so worthwhile to just build those important relationships. Yeah, I would really encourage that. We'll move on from entrepreneurship, just so we're allowing enough time, but perhaps we can come back to this once we've rounded up the feedback from all three of our groups. From the Businesses of Sanctuary group, I think we've got Stephanie who was taking notes. Would you like to report back the kind of key recommendations from our group, Stephanie? Are you there?
I thought I had found her and upgraded. Hang on a sec. Stephanie, can you just put your hand up for a minute?
Oh, she's in the chat there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There you go. You can unmute and turn your camera on now, Stephanie.
Thank you. I think you can hear me now.
We can.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a
we have had a very productive discussion, and I hope I will stay true to the words of the people who spoke during the sessions. But we were discussing about what does it mean to be a business of sanctuary, and what are the practical steps that individuals, organizations, and businesses can take to support refugees into employment and also into meaningful employment. So I've summed up the discussion, and I think there's 3 main points I would like to talk about, and maybe my co-speakers then will like to add something. So first of all, there is an issue in invisibility, both for the employers who do not have access to potential employees who are in the refugee community, and also for refugees who do not have access to those employers who are interested in working with them. So the invisibility goes both ways. So one of the recommendations would be to make information available to all through a platform, a database, or maybe to make employers pledge their support, so we can match people together. One way to overcome this invisibility would be also to engage large employers and build on their corporate social responsibility to support refugees and organizations who work with them. And maybe it would encourage smaller businesses as well to do the same. The second issue is preventing access to businesses, that prevents access to businesses, is a mismatch between the needs of the employers and the potential employees, which is caused by a lack of communication and a lack of knowledge about what is possible. There's not enough knowledge about the system for refugees when they arrive. How can they enter the system, and how can they work towards employment? And there's not enough knowledge for employers about how they can support them. So these employers should have an understanding of who the individuals are so they can best support them. And the third issue, and I've jumped a little bit, and this is my own interpretation of what was said, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everyone was trying to say that we need to go beyond the refugee label or word to show that we are talking about individuals who have skills. We're not asking people to hire refugees so they can tick a box. We're asking people to look at the skill set of the diversity of people that is in Swansea, in Wales, in the UK. And if we go beyond this business aspect, if refugees were better embedded in the community, then closing the gap between the refugees and employment opportunities may be easier. So beyond businesses, all the people and organizations here today are working towards creating a culture of welcome. And this question of how to engage refugees in meaningful employment opportunities would certainly be more productive if the issue was embedded in a broader conversation. We cannot talk about employment without talking about opportunity, without talking about life. So if anyone wants to add on what I've been saying, please.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think we were also talking about this idea of creating some kind of kite mark, some kind of accreditation for businesses and employers to be a business of sanctuary, following on from what was discussed this morning. And we talked about, it's not just about encouraging businesses to create employment opportunities, but all the other things that businesses can do, to do what Stephanie was saying, helping refugees to experience more of a welcome generally in society. So whether employers can, educate their staff about what it means to be a refugee, can involve refugees in other ways, and so that employers are then better primed for when a refugee does apply for a job with them, where there is a skills match, that they're better informed about the challenges that those people may have faced or the skills that they have to offer. Jenny, your hand is up. Would you like to come in on any of this?
I would, yes. It was something that occurred to me when the last session, the report on the last session was being given. I'm thinking about a friend of mine who is a question of having the qualifications but not being able to access employment. So she was a qualified pharmacist from Pakistan, all her education in English. Her English is excellent. She then, when she was here, managed to avail herself of a similar program that Hannah did, which was a PGCE, CTE, I can't remember the acronym. But anyway, so she's trained in post-16, teaching maths, sciences, chemistry. So you think people are crying out for those. She moved to a big city in England to try to get access to more jobs, but found they didn't employ people straight off. They employed you for a few days here and a few days there. And in doing that, if she were to give up her unemployment and take a job for a couple of days here, she would lose her housing benefit. And as a single parent with 2 children, she couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of many. It is a huge challenge, that, Jenny. I'm gonna move us on because I think there are other.
But she tried to get around it by setting herself up as a sole trader.
Ah. Oh, sorry, we lost you. Yeah, whether self-employment is a way around those sorts of challenges. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's just she needs support in promoting herself as a tutor. Otherwise, it's word of mouth.
Yeah, and you make a really important point about these skills that are so desperately needed. Hannah was talking earlier about being a nutritionist. Our society desperately needs nutritionists, and there's surely opportunities, if not for employment, then certainly for entrepreneurship. And same with maths and science tutoring. So it's empowering people to take their careers into their own hands, and then making sure the support is available to support those startup businesses. Ben, would you like to come in and talk about the database that you're involved with developing?
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, I think I could do with a nutritionist myself, given the number of takeaways I've been ordering throughout the last year and a half. So if anybody has a good contact for a nutritionist, that would be much appreciated. So yeah, briefly, I just because I think this ties in quite nicely to a lot of the discussion that we've just had over the last few minutes. So we're Refugee Employment Network. We've been developing a digital platform which is used by refugee support organizations, or which will be used by refugee support organizations to sort of register and enroll the refugees that they're working with. So there'll be a process they'll go through where they'll record their skills, their education background, their employment history, and so on, any qualifications or trade licenses that they might have. English levels, all of that kind of information that you might need for, for employability purposes. And there's also the opportunity to kind of put in a career plan there where they can put short-term and long-term goals. And there's also a login pathway for employers. So we are going to put together a panel of employers who will be able to log into the platform and do one of 2 things. Either post jobs on there, so job vacancies. So it might, for example, similar to an Indeed or a LinkedIn Jobs, they'll be able to post opportunities that the clients, the refugees can apply for directly through the platform. The other thing that the employers can do is browse through the candidates on there. So, for example, if they have a vacancy as, an engineering vacancy, for example, then they can look through all of the client information, which is all anonymized, where they'll be able to browse for clients that they think might be suitable for the role and then reach out to them through their caseworker to speak to them more about the role or to invite them for interview. And I guess the last thing that we're hoping that this platform will be able to do is really help us on a national level to develop employer engagement strategies. I think that's something that has been really difficult to do. And I think lots of people have got really good ideas, and there have been lots of excellent kind of initiatives already, but they have tended to be on quite small scales, so local or regional at best. And what we hope to do is get lots of data about the skill sets and the education and employment backgrounds of all of the refugees that are registered on the platform, and then use this to go to employers across the UK and say, hey, look how many incredible people we've got with such a diverse and varied backgrounds. So it's a really big project, but it is a really exciting one. We're hoping to launch it in September with a handful of organizations who'll be able to start using it. There is, I'll stop speaking now, but there is a short demonstration of the platform as it currently is on our website. So I'll send that out in the chat as well.
Thank you, Ben.
I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think that sounds like a really useful tool and something that's come up a lot in today's conference about how do we connect employers with the right skills and vice versa. So do share the link to that in the chat, and I'm sure there are many organisations here today who would find that a useful resource from September onwards. I think we're out of time for our plenary, so I better hand back over to you, Ahmed, to take us from here.
Well, thank you very much, Dawn, for chairing this, and also I'd like to thank all the contributors, for all the speakers for such a compelling and also interesting kind of discussion about, people bringing a variety of kind of perspectives into some of the challenges faced by people seeking sanctions in terms of employment.